Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, hosted by Lodestar Solutions and Motio. I am Heather Cole with Lodestar Solutions, and we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes here as we see people piling in to this webinar. You are going to want to grab a notebook and a pen, because I guarantee you, you are going to learn some nuggets of gold today as we hear about the journey where Orthofix moved from on-prem Cognos into the Cognos SaaS. We're going to learn lessons that they learned and so forth. So this is being recorded, just so you guys know. And we will, once again, we're seeing people pile in here. Let's give them one more minute. We will officially get started. In the meantime, let's just make sure our chat's working. Everyone, can you guys put, where are you coming in from today? So I am in beautiful Tampa, Florida. If you can put that in chat, let's make sure our chat is working for everybody. Additionally, throughout this, you should be able to put something in okay, there we go. We see them coming in. Wow, we have a good representation here. We got people coming in from Dallas, from Canada. Oh, we're officially international, guys. South Michigan, Des Moines, Iowa. Oh, go Cyclones. Chicago. We have Hamburg, Germany. Oh my gosh, we're really going international. Quebec, Lubbock, Texas, Plano. Oh, Bradenton, Florida. We got people just across the street from us practically. Virginia. Paris, France is in the house. Wow, guys, we're really making it international. Well, welcome, everyone. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started right now. Once again, those of you that just joined us, I am Heather Cole with Lodestar Solutions. We are a value-added reseller and implementer of Cognos, based in the United States. We are hosting this event with our dear friends at Motio. And how this all happened is one of our clients, Orthofix, was nominated and actually selected among hundreds, I think maybe even thousands of applicants to speak at IBM Tech Exchange. You know, just raise your hand. Did you guys go to Tech Exchange? I've been to all of them. They're phenomenal. If you haven't done it, it's the next one's in October. Put it on your calendar. It's here in Orlando, Florida. So William was nominated, selected to present his story at Tech Exchange, and he got the worst time slot. Yes, he got the Thursday time slot at the last time slot. And so he's got such a great story that Lynn Moore and I said, you know what? We need a platform for William to share his story to everyone. So that's where we're at today. So what we're going to learn today is we're going to discover Orthofix's journey to move to Cognos SaaS. We're going to learn some lessons learned. That's why you wanted to have a notebook. We're also going to talk about how Motio played a role in this and how Motio can save you time and ensure your success. Now, I mentioned that William had developed this amazing slide deck, like really detailed oriented for the IBM Tech Exchange, and it's phenomenal. But it's a lot to cover in an hour on a Zoom webinar. So here's what we're going to do for you guys. We've gotten the permission from William to actually share that detailed slide deck from Tech Exchange with all the screenshots and everything. And we're going to email it to everyone that's in attendance today. So you'll have that. So today we're going to focus on his journey and lessons learned, as opposed to like, here's screenshots of what it is. Are you guys cool with that? Okay. So how are we going to begin the story? I'd like to introduce William Tarry. He is the senior business developer at Orthofix, but he's way more than that. He actually, maybe you guys are like this. Are you guys like this where you have multiple responsibilities? But we're going to hear how William not only migrated it, but juggled a lot of balls in the air at the same time. Now, don't worry, you don't have to listen to me all day, because we have brought in Gary Lafferty. Again, some of you might know Gary from IBM Tech Exchange, because he was brought in by IBM. He's going to be our key interviewer today, and he also runs a tech entrepreneur podcast that you might want to check out. So first off, William, I'd love to introduce you.
Well, thank you for introducing me and for inviting me to this. I'm the senior BI developer at Orthofix, but I wear a lot of hats. I'm the primary admin for Cognos, Power BI, Alteryx, Airtable, just about anything that has admin in it, they throw at me. I help with development, primarily Cognos, working on Power BI, doing some Alteryx development, helping with the Airtable team, dealing a lot with people from various technical levels, from neophytes that just use the tools available to them, to those who are power users who get multiple tools together and work them together, business users, and some of the C-level folks that need output and need some directions on where to go with the company. So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of different hats you have to wear. So I kind of feel like you might have one title, but you have a very broad range of work that you have to do across a lot of different areas in the business, and with technical expertise varying. So
Excellent. And Gary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'm just going to hand the baton right over to you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Welcome. It's great to see you all guys here. My name is Gary Lafferty. I am a specific speaker trainer. I train executives and founders of tech companies how to speak on stage and how to get their message across. And as Heather said, I'm also the host of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring together tech leaders from all across the globe every single episode to share their insights on their tech expertise. And I'm actually really looking forward to this particular session with William. I've got so many questions that I want to get started with you, William. So if you don't mind, let's just jump straight in here. So before we talk about your journey of moving from on-prem to cloud, I've got a question for you. I didn't prep you for this particular question deliberately. If you had one piece of advice to everyone listening here on getting things done, what would it be?
let's see. I think it's a combination of three things, and it's planning, communication, and testing. And those are it's one piece of advice broken up into three lobes.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to take all those three, and I'm going to into it as we go through our interview today. Hopefully that you can dive a little bit more into that. So for those of them who are listening who have never heard of Orthofix, do you want to just give us a brief overview of what Orthofix does?
Okay, so Orthofix is a medical device manufacturing company. It is recognized as the 8th largest medical device company in the world, and there's a large portfolio of biologics, spinal hardware, bone growth therapies, and other orthopedic solutions. And the company started in Verona, Italy, now headquartered in Louisville, Texas, and it's one company that I am very proud to be a part of and to help drive the growth and the direction.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I was listening to what you were saying earlier, but you have one title, but you're a man of many hats. You're almost like the 10-hat man. You're constantly juggling all those hats that you have to wear. And as we get deeper into this story, we're going to find out exactly how many hats you had to wear and exactly how many hats you had to juggle in order to get this migration through. But let's dial it right back to the very beginning. Before you actually did this migration, could you explain to us and share with us what was the motivation? Where were you at with your stories, etc., at that moment in time that motivated you to start looking for an alternative, from on-prem to potentially moving to cloud?
So I started with Orthofix in 2019, and at that time they were still on Cognos 10, and they had been trying to move to Cognos 11 for a couple of years. And there was just so many problems that occurred during their initial move towards that. And when I came in, I made that my goal, is to within a year get a move to Cognos 10 because of support requests and the fact that new technologies, new capabilities. So it took a little while to get my arms wrapped around the whole Cognos environment and all of the business users, talk with everybody, get their feedback, find out what was working, what wasn't, and then really kind of pushing and dragging people across the finish line to get a move to version 11. Once we did that, our company had been looking at the Oracle cloud solutions, and they had decided that was the direction they wanted to go. And before that, when I heard about moving to Cognos Cloud, I have to admit that I was resistant initially. I started reading up more about it, learning about the technologies, and I became a quick convert to, yes, it's time to move to cloud. So the big things with cloud is that depending upon the level of service you get, whether it's software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service, determines how much control you have over your environment. Orthofix went with the SaaS, which is software as a service. So we have the least amount of control over the environment, or pardon me, the software platform, but the software itself, we have total control over that. And we have total visibility to the back end and to working with the migration portion, moving some files up to the server. But whenever it comes to maintenance, we don't have to touch anything at all. That's all done by IBM. And since we've been on cloud, we've only had 2 instances where the cloud was offline. One time was midnight one day, and we didn't even know it until the next morning. And one time was during the day, and they told us before we even noticed it. So I do have to say that IBM is very proactive on their environment whenever they notice any issues. And
Yeah,
we've
absolutely.
been very pleased with it.
Yeah, that's an extremely important part of it. So there'll be people listening here that may be considering or have been considering going from on-prem to cloud. They might be a little bit curious. Or they might be kicking it down the road a little bit and say, "I'll get to it eventually." If you can go back to when you were thinking about, okay, we now need to move. If you hadn't have moved, where was the company going? Where was all that storage actually going? If you hadn't have made that move, then where do you think that company would? Where do you think Orthofix would have been?
We still would have been on probably version 11.1.3. Then that's due to pressures of getting work done versus looking at new technologies and preparing for upgrades or for new installations. So we would definitely be further behind the curve on the version. We would probably still be on a version that's not supported, and we would not have some of the technologies or capabilities in the new version. So we are in the process of getting the last environment pushed to 11.2.4, just in time for them to announce that the new long-term support is 12.04, I think. So we're still a little behind, but we are a lot closer than we would have been had we not made the jump.
Yeah, so it's obviously a big decision to move. There's lots of decisions to be made to do something like that, to do that migration. Right? Could you talk us through what was your decision-making process? From, if you can recall, what is it that had to be in place? What's the kind of things that came to mind for you that had to be checked off in order for you to choose this migration process?
So for us, the migration process really depended on getting the customer base to support us, because if they didn't support the migration, then it wasn't going to go anywhere. A lot of that had to do with one-on-one meetings or team-on-team meetings where we went through the technologies, we went through what the capabilities were that we were going to be moving to and what the advantages were to it, and the fact that once we get everything migrated and we get everything on a stable platform, that the turnaround for new requests or for new changes to reports was going to be much swifter. And there was also going to be a lot more collaboration with the business users or the developers as we did this. So for me, it was, like I said, part of my 3-point strategy, communication. That one was the primary to it, that if that had not done it, then nothing else would have gone.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that communication. Communication is obviously a very vital part when it's come to migration. What were your must-haves when it came to communication? Let's talk a little bit about that for us, please.
So our environment, we do have everything broken down by business groups, and that's generated or handled by folders within our environment. So at the folder level, we decided we had to go find who the owners were for it, who were the primary, approvers for these particular groups, these folders, and get them to allocate resources for testing, for meetings, and for strategy sessions. So we did a top down and bottom up. So as we got the approval to make this migration, we went to all of the business owners. We started getting them in the process. We started setting up expectations for what we needed from their group. And then we went out to the individual users and the individual testers and started finding out what their schedules were, when they were available, what they were doing, and what resources they need in order to make sure this was a successful process.
And was there any challenges that you had to overcome on that process at that moment in time?
There were. The company, we do have people all over the world, so getting time zones synchronized, getting schedules synchronized, getting times when people can all meet as a team. That was a bit challenging at first, but the more we did it, the more we had people attending. The better that went, because people were actually seeing results from it, and we were getting to hear what their problem points were, what the steps would be to get them to where a problem was now a success. And then we started giving them timelines. And as we met those timelines, we got more confidence from our business users to help in the process.
Yeah, right. So I want to talk about choices, right? When it comes down to choices, there's Cognos stuff can take you so far, but you chose to go with Motio. What were the major decision factors for you that said, okay, we're going to need a little bit more than what's out of the box of Cognos? We're going to need a little bit more from that. What was the decisions you had to have and had to make in order to use the Motio tools?
So for us, Motio was originally brought in. I had worked at it at a previous job. When it was brought in by management, they had it installed before I got here. They were looking at it as a testing software, and they were thinking, we'll keep it for testing, and then we won't need it anymore. And I started showing them other capabilities within Motio. So the versioning, the testing, the migration path, being able to, if somebody deleted something in the wrong folder, bring stuff back. So lots of, oops, I deleted something, or I made an upgrade yesterday and I need to go back to a month before. So we were able to do those for them. But showing that capability and having the testing capability within Motio, those were the reasons Motio was chosen. And then when I started showing them the more capabilities that Motio had, the more it could be used, that really made the business owners and management much happier, because we had multiple locations, multiple capabilities that they were not aware of.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that oops moment a little bit earlier on, because I don't think that most people aren't aware that when you're doing a migration, you end up inadvertently sometimes deleting things that you didn't necessarily want to delete. What was it the ability? What was it about the Motio ability that gave you that almost like safety net when it came to accidentally deleting files during the migration?
So our environment, we've got it broken down into two main areas for our business users. We have what we call our standard reports. Those are locked down where end users can't make changes to them. And then we have user reports folders, which we call the Wild West. They can build reports, they can update them, and it is only their developers who can do so. But part of that is because they can make those changes, you'll have 2 or 3 developers touch the same report, make a change to meet their need, and well, that change didn't meet my need. Now I'm have to shake it out. And when you have reports that are touched multiple times or accidentally deleted because we don't need this anymore, delete it. Well, that team didn't, but another team did. So when I had mentioned that we had versioning capability to the business leaders and the main business or power users, they were the ones who came to me saying, we know you can back up, can you restore this? And the first couple of times I did that, that made them true believers that Motio was the tool to get us across the finish line on this.
Yeah, that is such an important part that people don't necessarily prepare for. Or if they do, they're thinking, well, we can't back up. It's a mistake then. And we'd rather not do anything and stick with what they got because they're too scared of what might happen. What did you have to go? Could you talk us through what you had to do to prepare for the migration? Because there are going to be people here listening who are considering potentially doing this migration and thinking, how much work is actually involved just in the prep side of it? What preparation did you have to go through to prepare for this upgrade?
So for me and for our team, as we were looking at it, it was more than just lift and move and drop. We needed to know what did we have in place and what was actually being used, and then what was being left behind that wasn't being used. So being able to use Motio, Motio CI, Motio PI, and the auditing database to find where is all of our content, what's actually being used, what's scheduled that's going out to people that no longer here and is getting bounce backs. We were using the Motio tool, Motio CI, Motio PI, to get a list of all of our content. Once we knew what we had, where it was, we were able to go to our end users and the testers and say, okay, these are all the reports you have. Which ones are primary, which ones are secondary, which ones can go away. And we kind of gave ourselves a list of what was the important reports, which ones had to be validated, and which ones had to be either touched by the end users, or we could show that there was a testing done to validate the data. That gave us, okay, if we have 800 reports in one folder and only 200 of them are must-haves and the rest they can go or not, that gave us the way to start scheduling out when we would do our testing, who needed to be part of it, and who needed to be the final approver for any reports. So that, if you don't know what you have, you don't know what you need to take with you.
Absolutely. And that leads nicely into a very important part when it comes to migration, is the cleanup. You don't want to be taking everything over. You want to know what is good, what's bad, and as you said, what can be left behind. What were the typical challenges and issues that you would be having or people could have with this storage stuff? Because as you say, there are reports after reports, there's multiple touches of reports. It's like everybody's putting a file in the garage, and before you know it, your garage is completely full and you're thinking, okay, I've got to move now, but where do I start? So let's talk about that process then of the cleanup. Can you talk us through that, the process and the ease that you went through for this really important part of the migration?
So this actually, like I said, Motio CI, Motio PI, without that, it probably would have taken us 2 or 3 times as long just to get what we needed or what we had. Using those tools also helped us highlight what reports were actively scheduled, which ones had, give us a list of the emails so we could compare it against who was still there and what reports were going out to people that were no longer there. We were able to find out all the reports that were in use and needed. We were able to find out the reports that hadn't been touched in years. And what we did was, when we first migrated to the cloud, they ask you to take a full export of everything. They import that into the new environment, and then we go through and clean things up. So after everything was moved over, I went ahead and I deleted all the content in our cloud environment, and then I moved over content from our production environment, one group at a time. And then this allowed us to highlight the reports that were still needed. Once they were tested, get them moved. It gave us a chance to find reports that could be getting rid of. We put those in an archive folder, back those up, because you always end up saying, we don't need this report. And then a month later, we need that report. That able to give us set our priority list for which reports were the highest priority, which reports were the lowest priority. And then we found a lot of reports that were made to answer one question one day and then never touched ever since. So we went, I'd say it was about 8,000 to 10,000 reports. When we first did the migration, I think we went down to 5,000 or 6,000. And since then, we've had other migrations that have done where we've had to bring in new reports and clean out older ones. But we've started a process where once a quarter or once every 6 months, we go back to the individual businesses and individual groups and say, these are your reports that are still being used. These are the ones that haven't been used in this time. What do you want to do with them? So we now have a process in place for cleaning up the old.
Yeah, because that's a very important part. As I say, we don't want to be migrating stuff that either no one ever wants anymore, or they only touched it once and whatever. But that was quite, I'm glad you mentioned it, because for context, how many reports did you move again?
Initially, it was the 10,000. By the time we did our final migration, there was over 6,000 reports. And We're still at about 6,000 reports, even though we've cleaned them up because we've had another merge since then. The company merged, Orthofix merged with C-Spine, and they were migrating from a different version of on-prem Cognos to the cloud, and getting them to make the migration was a bit of a challenge too. But fortunately, having gone through it once from 10 to 11 and from on-prem to cloud, we had a infrastructure in place, and we were able to get them on and get them moved over faster than it would have had that been the first time we done it.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because a little bit later on. But before I do, because that is doing one migration is tough enough, and then by the time you merge with a company of similar size to you, that's another whole headache, which I want to come on to and see how you got past that part of your journey. But before we do, I really want to emphasize this particular point about being able to undelete or fix one's mistake. You're moving an awful lot of reports. There's obviously going to be challenges with the oops button. Deleted the wrong one there. And so how easy is it within the Motio tool system to realize that mistake and then fix that mistake?
So to realize the mistake, if it's our business team, we don't do active versioning, so it's all behind the scenes. So the only people who have access to the Motio tool, Motio CI tool, are the BI team. But once somebody comes to us and they've realized they've made that mistake, within 5 minutes, we've gone in, we found either the update they made and backed out of it, or the report they deleted and brought it back. So it is a very simple process, and the longest part about that is creating the support ticket to justify that restore.
Yeah. That's an issue, because I think that's, again, putting people's mind at rest there, that there are going to be mistakes sometimes, and they are generally mistakes. At that moment in time when the question was asked, I didn't need it, but now in retrospect, it is something that we need. And with most, you can't go backwards. As with most of those migrations, once you've made that move and made that decision, it's done, isn't it? It's absolutely done. And with Motio being able to go back and request that it gets put back, that's a great peace of mind to have. So this is obviously a project that takes heavy duty, to a degree, day-to-day management. How did you manage the project on a day-to-day basis? And what support were you getting from Motio team to enable you to do it easier?
So the process itself, that it's something that if I had any hair left before this, I would have ripped it all out. But it was definitely a challenge because there's so many people involved. A lot of it is getting introduced to the right people, getting the lines of communication open, and then getting that comfort level where I can easily reach out to them, they can easily reach out to me. Once that was in place, then it was working on the planning stage, where plan regular communication, either meetings or regular emails that we sent out. That is, like I say, my communication, planning, testing. So in order to get to the testing, you needed to do those first two. Once we had that in place, and once the migration, the steps were moving, and where we could see progress on either migrating from 10 to 11 on-prem to cloud, 2 companies into one, Motio CI, Motio PI, that tool really made the migration so much easier because it was able to test your versions between environments or on-prem cloud, old company, new companies. That right there allowed us to do a lot of the testing for us. And that was, we didn't do any automated testing in that the tool does allow, where you can set up standard schedules to do testing for you. Most of it was point in time testing, but in retrospect, that we do have a number of reports which are run daily, and we could have set up the testing to run on a daily basis. That way, if there were any differences between them on the different days that we ran it, it could have brought that to our attention. We did not do that at the time due to speed considerations, and we just didn't know it was there. Now that we do, we actually have some of those testing done on our dev UAT environment to our production environment. That way, when we're making changes, we can make sure it's not something that's going to negatively affect the company or give us bad data.
Yeah, that's extremely important. When it comes to the testing stuff, we are moving stuff over, so it's vital information. testing is one of those things which has to be done. What advice would you be giving people if they're thinking of doing this migration when it comes to testing? What advice would you and insights would you now give to people when it's right? When do you start the testing? What should you be testing? What is the most important thing about testing to make sure everything gets migrated across properly?
That's very good questions. So when we started our testing process, it began with our team. We wanted to test to make sure that the environment that we're going to matches security-wise, capability-wise, that as each people get moved over, they're not losing something they were supposed to have access to or losing capabilities that they had. So we did a lot of testing with test accounts, putting them in different groups to test to make sure, okay, once somebody logs in, are they going to be able to see what they want? Then we brought in across the different teams, we brought in some of our primary testers and we got them logged in. Okay, start checking things, make sure you can see what you're supposed to see, make sure the reports are there. And then when we started getting into the actual unit testing of the reports, we told them, let us know which ones you want to do through Motio CI, see how well those work. That's when we discovered that the difference between some of the Cognos versions, one place had implicit sorting, the other one, it required explicit sorting. And so our testing showed everything was wrong. We did our sorting and everything was right. So a little bit of learning process along the way. But a lot of it also had to do, make sure that the testers were communicating with us that once they saw something that looked kinky or a little bit off, or they're not quite sure, they don't get that warm fuzzy feeling, reach out to us. And then we'd sit there, go through a meeting with them, share screens, see exactly what they're seeing, and then find out, is this a new capability because of change in the software, or is this something that we need to make a correction to? And that's where that communication and having that confidence of them being able to reach out to us and vice versa, that's where that came in. And that's really something that without that, I think testing would probably still be going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we want to mitigate risk as much as we can once we're doing that transition. And as you said, and I love what you said there, that the more communication there is, the more confident that is built. And then that's vice versa. You know, if you want a lack of confidence and people become scared about not taking the move, then don't communicate with them. But the fact that you managed to have great communication between you, that built up confidence, and then that just made everything a lot easier. Let's talk about mitigating. Well, no, before we talk about mitigating risk, I want to go back on this communication thing about C-Spine. So tell us what happened. How did C-Spine and Orthofix, just quickly tell us what happened there. And then this was in the middle of your migration, wasn't it?
It was near the end of our migration to cloud, but the companies merged, and that was announced, I think, the end of 2022, and I think it's been so long. And at that point, we started getting access to their environment, and their data sources were SQL Server, our data sources were Oracle, so that decision had to be made for the migration. We did some testing on how reports were working before we migrated everything into Oracle for Oracle EBS. They didn't really have as strong of a EDW environment that we did, and so taking data from your Oracle source system and putting it into a true reporting environment, that was something that we helped them move along to get better reporting, or at least get equal reporting between the two companies. There was a lot of fear on the side of the Orthofix side, knowing that, okay, we're coming into a new environment where you have a lot more resources for the Cognos reporting than we do. So they were afraid they were going to lose capabilities, lose control, and I had to walk them through the process of how we're going to move them in, give them that warm, fuzzy feeling, get the communication lines going there, and then start showing them this is the new environment. Go in, test it out, see how things work. And then I showed them the Motio CI and how we could test the two reports and compare them to each other. So we were able to point our cloud environment to their SQL Server environment, make sure all the reporting matched between their on-prem environment. Then once they got moved over into the cloud, then we started moving them from their SQL Server EBS to Oracle EBS. And once that migration was made, showing that the data is matching or as close as we could get it, and where there were differences, as long as it's something we can explain and they knew what was happening, they were able to work with us and get that confidence to the process.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, about that confidence, because as I said, you hadn't even completed your own migration yet, and now, just as you're coming to the end of your migration, you've now got C-Spine coming in and with their different things and their different reports. But I suppose it made it a lot easier for you then to put them more at ease, because you'd already done a majority of that work of the testing of the migration, and therefore can kind of guide them through it as regard to what to expect. Which leads me to my next question: is that it's very easy to assume that you're the guy, you were dealing with it, and all the hats you were wearing. But in reality, you had to deal with multiple teams. You had to deal with multiple teams in the Orthofix, and then multiple teams with C-Spine with the merge. What recommendations do you have for those who are listening here thinking, this coordination between the teams is going to be quite difficult? What recommendations do you have for coordinating migration with all the different teams?
So because we had done the migration 2 times already in Orthofix by itself, having that framework there was a big leverage for our migration or the consolidation between the 2 companies. So using that, we spoke to their business users. They structured their Cognos environment a little bit differently. I showed them how we did ours. It was, again, the communication. We figured out who our main owners were, who our main testers were, started working with them, showing what I've done in the past, showing what I'm planning on doing to move them into our Cognos, the cloud environment. Having that process in place and showing them that we've already done this, that this is what's working for us, but also telling them that if we're going through this and you don't feel it's working, let us know. Let's talk through it. Let's find out what needs to be done. And that was, again, building that communication and then the confidence of, okay, I'm open to hearing what your problems are, what your concerns are. These were the successes we had. These were the problems we ran into. What is your fear? What is it you need from us to give you that feeling of confidence that this is going to work for you, that this is a good solution? When we had that, and like I said, getting that communication, scheduling meetings, regular meetings to talk with the testers as well as the owners, and then giving them regular updates as to where we were in the process, what was working, what we're having issues with, and what needed to be worked through. The transparency there helped the confidence level and the communication.
Yeah, that's it. Go back to that communication. It goes back to the planning, like you said. Make sure the planning's in place because it's a big project, but with the ease of having the teams together with Motio. Communication, let's inspire more confidence. But confidence can be inspired as well by mitigating risk. So it's how do you mitigate? How did you mitigate risk, and how are you continuing to mitigate risk where you are today, pre and post the migration?
So pre-migration risk, a lot of that had to do with the timing of when we were expected to be off our old environment, when that was going to be turned off, and getting the testing, getting the migration done into the cloud so that people can test things. So before we turned off the old SQL environment, we had to make sure that there was parity between the reports, that things were matching. Again, that's where Motio came in quite a bit to do a lot of the heavy lifting there to show that, yes, we could show you if there's any differences, this is exactly where it was. This is exactly what it is. So that gave a lot of the confidence to the business users and the end users, the business owners as well. The migration, I've completely lost it.
Yeah, we're talking about mitigating risk. So you talked about mitigating risk with the help of Motio and that team.
Like I said, way too many hats, way too much going on. The risks really were are we going to have the old environment turned off before we're ready for the new environment? And that took, there was a lot of midnight oil burning. There was a lot of working. The C-Spine folks were out of the California office, so they were working later in the evening. I tend to be an early morning person, but putting in that extra time, getting them to see that what the changes were, to see that the reports were matching. The risks that we really had were they were afraid that they were going to lose visibility into their data once they made the migration over, because they thought everything was going to be forced into a single format that they didn't support or that they weren't used to. Showing them that, okay, yes, we are going to a new format, but the type of reporting you want can still be done. You can still get the data and still get the insight that you need or that you've seen before, or showing you that, okay, what you have is here, what we have here, we think is better, check them out, and coordinating with them. That, again, communication is what really kept that from becoming a showstopper.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there'll be people here listening. It's quite a lot of change. It sounds like it's a lot of work to change, but as I said, because you are using Motio tools and the Motio team, they're helping you do, as you call it, the heavy lifting. I know. How long did it actually take you? And then I'm going to dive a little bit into the reason why in a little bit, but how long would it take you to do that actual migration?
So originally we planned on the migration taking 10 to 12 months, and it took about 16 to 18. And the reason for that, the first big problem that we ran into was setting up the VPN VTI tunnel between the IBM cloud location and the Orthofix domain. Part of the reason that took long is because the difference in the technologies, and also part of it was the initial communication. It was all done on emails. It was all done on, okay, make this change. Now we've made that, and then it took a while to get back to the people on both sides. So what ended up happening, or what ended up making our breakthrough, is scheduling a meeting with IBM, getting IBM support, getting their network folks, getting our network folks and infrastructure, and getting Cisco TAC, which was our vendor for network, getting everybody onto a meeting. And I think it lasted a couple of hours, but getting everybody together, once we did that, that got the actual communication lines working. Once we were able to make that VPN VTI connection, then the rest of it went a lot more smoothly, or at least it started moving. But they said when we first made this that it might take 6 to 8 months to do it. It took that long to get it done, to get that VPN VTI done. That was the biggest hurdle. Once we did that, the rest of it, whenever we had a problem, IBM, they are very responsive. So it's not just calling them up. You do create a case with IBM, but if it's a priority one where production is down, they respond within minutes. If it's something where it's not a priority, but it is an issue, they are responsive. I think the longest I've ever waited for a response from IBM support was 10 minutes on something like that. But IBM support, they really do try. They are available. If you call them up, say, let's have a meeting, they become available for it. So I do have to give them the credit due.
Yeah, it's absolutely key to have all the players communicating. And as I said, yours took a lot longer than let's say you should have done. But then you're also a man who's wearing 10 hats. You're doing so many things. Not many people can do a migration and then have a merger. And they're trying to do something else and then something else changes. So they could be actually dedicated to it. So it's great to see those kind of time scales and timelines so that people can actually see it. So between 6 to 8 months to quick to, in your example, add mergers in and add this and learning new stuff to what do you say, 16 months. So, within that particular time, if there's challenges, unexpected challenges in there. So now you've got it in, you've done the migration. You've now got end user training. What recommendations do you have for end user training post-migration?
So post-migration end user training, I put together with my team members, obviously. We put together a number of different training documents to walk people through standard process, like navigating through the interface, running reports separately from the standard click on it and wait for the run, and basically kind of targeted them at different levels of capability and functionality within the tool. Once we got those, then it was scheduling times with the end users to do the training. For that, because we have, I think it's about 500 different users, I just created multiple meetings on different times throughout the day across a couple of different weeks. That way, if somebody couldn't make it one week at 10 a.m. on a Monday, they could make it at 3 p.m. on a Friday. It was so flexibility, and then also understanding that it's never a one size fits all. You try to get details across, but being open to one of the consumers or one of the report developers calling you up saying, having an issue, do you have a minute to show it to me? So it's being able to break free from what you're doing to help the end user get the one report the way they want it. For training, it's kind of hard. It's impossible to, like I said, to do a one size fits all. It's always unique to that particular request, but there are certain levels. So you have some people that they're consumers, they go in, they run their reports. Once they're done, they don't think about the environment. Others, they're constantly running reports to get different outputs. Others are actual high-end developers. They know how to use the tool. You just have to give them the access and they go running with it. So.
Yeah, well, it really has been, as I said, from start to finish, William, a fascinating journey from, the pre-planning stage to the idea that one has to move now from on-prem to cloud. And, thank you very much for sharing your journey with us. And before we go into the Q&As, because I can just see the chat going off with tons of questions from there. To wrap our little session up, if there were somebody's out there who are thinking about doing some migration or working with Motio, what recommendations would you leave them with?
I would recommend, I understand the fear of change. Don't let that be an obstacle. Do as much investigation as you can on your own, but don't think that you're the only one who has to do it. Reach out to, like Motio Lodestar folk, reach out to other people who have done it, get some insights, get some communication lines going there. And then once a decision has been made to start moving towards it, then start your planning immediately. Start your communication immediately. Don't wait. The longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. And even if you want to start communication well before you even make a decision, do that too, because it never hurts to have open communication lines between you and your user base.
Yes, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, William, for your time today. I'm going to hand you over to Heather, where we're going to tax more of your brain with some of the questions.
Okay, before we do that, a couple things. So yes, we have a lot of questions. But before I get to the questions, I just want to make sure, kind of wrap it up a little bit. The first step, guys, is to determine if SaaS is even right for you, right? And then at Lodestar and Motio, we can help you guys get estimated costs for the different options. Every one of you is on a different licensing model. But I want to highlight one thing. If you have PVU licensing today and have that dreaded ILMT tool that you have to have, moving to SaaS will make it so you never have to deal with ILMT. And number two, you will never fail an audit. Woo woo! Like the crowd goes roar. And we also gotta let's definitely explore the power of Motio tools. This is like one of those things that you just shouldn't leave home without it, right? So one of the things that we're going to do while we go through Q&A, I'm going to bring the screen up. We are offering to you guys, everyone here, if you want to just take your phone, scan this right now, you're going to get onto my Mike on our team's calendar, and we can just have a chat about your current situation. There's no obligation. There's nothing. Let's just have a chat about what's going on with you. But now that we have that, I'm going to leave this screen up. I'm going to go through all the questions that we have here, and there were a lot. First one, I'm going to field out to Edwin. If you can unmute yourself, Edwin, with Motio, welcome.
Thank you.
There was a question, does Motio support Tableau as well? So
No, it's a very good question. And the answer is yes, we do. And especially to make an inventory of what you have in your BI environment. So we support Power BI, Click, Cognos, and Tableau. And the first step of any project, whether it's going to cloud, do an upgrade, or any major change in your infrastructure, data source, you need to know your numbers. You need to know the inventory, and that's where we can help.
and guys, I know a lot of our Cognos clients also have Power BI. So if you missed that one, they also have good tools for Power BI. The next question, do you have to work with two-factor, and this is to William, did you have to work with two-factor authentication or single sign-on issues while migrating?
So we are using single sign-on in our environment. A lot of people think of single sign-on as you go to the URL and it automatically logs you in. But what single sign-on really is does it use your domain? And it does. We recently went from 7 different domains down to 4. So that kind of cleared our environment up. So and that has to do with having a older domain that we're keeping around for one software purpose, and then having one for the US, one for the C-spine folk, and one for the folks out of Italy. But it is single sign-on. It is tied to your Active Directory, and so you're not going to have to learn or remember multiple passwords. As long as you can log into your laptop, you can log into Cognos.
Excellent. This one, I think we're going to field this to Edwin. Do you, we do have security implemented folder-wise and report-wise. Does the migration take care of that security too, or only the content?
So I think what's important is, and we discussed that today, is that you take a full export of your content store. And that means that you take everything along. So I always recommend to clean up before you do that full export of your content store. But since you do a full export of your content store, you would take the security settings with you unless you change it.
Excellent. And I'm going to randomly, actually, we'll start with William on this one. How does the framework manager work in the cloud?
So once you go to cloud, because it is on the cloud, it is JDBC connection to your data sources. So it is DQM. You cannot use CQM in the cloud. So if you have not made the migration to DQM, dynamic query mode, and you're considering cloud, I would say move to that first. That way it avoids any kind of surprises there. But it's generally been pretty, because it is the way it connects through the VPN VTI, it does not use UNC for the naming conventions. So when you set up your data sources, if it is the name of a server, you have to change it to that IP. But that's a relatively minor change in the whole process.
Yeah, and to add to that, I believe that IBM now opens up for CQM as well, but then I still recommend to go to DQM, just because of the advantages of the DQM, and which can have major impact on reports and failure of reports. So yeah, like William said, do that beforehand, go to DQM. That would benefit you a lot. And if you do that when you're still on premise, you have way more flexibilities to solve things. So recommended is go to DQM and then do your cloud migration. I would not use CQM in the cloud.
Excellent. Okay, the next question. We have personal healthcare information and personal identity information involved in our data. When the Cognos is in the cloud, does anyone in IBM Cognos have access to our data? I think, William, you guys have healthcare data, I'm assuming. So maybe you can talk about your thoughts on this, because I believe the answer is nobody can touch your data.
And that is true. The cloud folks, they can access your environment. They do not have access to any of your content. So that's something that the reports that they do show that that's not something that they can touch or they can work on. So any kind of PHI, that is secure.
Yeah, and William, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys started thinking about this cloud journey way before you did it. but there was like a delay because at that time, IBM didn't actually have all the SOX compliance that you guys needed, correct?
That is correct. Our auditing team required one of the SOC 1 report and SOC 2 report. So our SOC 1 Part 1, SOC 1 Part 2, until they got that to us, our security team would not approve the full migration. So IBM did have to get that to us before we could actually turn that final switch to turn us off the on-prem and onto the cloud.
Excellent. But it's there now, guys. So if you're in healthcare, you're good, right?
Yes.
So this question comes from Tim. I have a question in connectivity when using cloud in the cloud. Any pros and cons or trouble connecting query data to other clouds like Salesforce? Anybody want to field this one?
So when we did the migration with C-Spine, they were using Salesforce. They still are, but they've reduced their amount of reporting on the Salesforce environment. But there is a connection to set up to connect to Salesforce. You do need to work with the infrastructure folk to make sure any specific ports are opened to make that handshake. But we connect to Jira Cloud, we connect to Salesforce Cloud, and there's a couple of other places that we connect that I cannot remember off the top of my head. I think most of them are closed out, but it is available and it is a successful connection.
A follow-up question, and SaaS, any way you can tuning the apps or do you even need to tune the servers for load balancing? And maybe, I don't know, Ted, I think you're on, maybe you can help with that one. When they're moving to SaaS, is there any load balancing they have to do?
No, I mean, I think IBM takes care of a lot of the back end as far as tuning and different capabilities are concerned. They're monitoring that. And I think William would agree with that, is that, you know, if there is a slowdown in the process, you open a PMR with IBM, they are on it. They are going to investigate why there is an issue. So there are some areas where you have the availability to tweak and somewhat also see that, you know, either degradation in performance or gain in performance. So if you're logging things or troubleshooting things, and this is where having a dev environment is also very important when we talk about the cloud. So you may or may not choose that option, but if you do choose that option, that's your playground. I mean, that's your area to really break it and push it to its limits. IBM has to bring it back for you, right? So there's some benefits to that, staying away from your production, you know, leveraging some options in logging. Logging can be a real detriment to performance for your end users. So that's one area that you can always go back in and check. So, you know, if you're on cloud, I would go minimal logging in your production environment, unless you're, you know, heck bent on, you know, capturing certain items, right? So that's where I would, you know, spend a little bit of time to, you know, really fine tune your environment.
Yeah, and to add to that, before you go to cloud, you know, our software is capable to record actually a busy period of your current production environment and then replay that exact same series of events on your cloud environment. And even you could say, well, this Monday morning between 9 and 10, where we ran all these reports, I want to ramp that up with 10, 20% and see if the cloud can handle that. So before you go live, I would always recommend to do these kind of stress and load tests, but then simulate basically what happened on your production with actual production usage data.
Excellent. Next question, we're going to go to Petty. Petty asked, I think we're going to field this to you, Ted. When you go to dynamic query mode, Transformer is not going to work, right?
Correct. Transformer is not going to work in dynamic query mode. It just does. I like to think of Transformer as a BlackBerry or one of those really legacy type tools, right? It's something that's not doesn't have a whole lot of weight from IBM as far as development is concerned. So when we talk about moving from compatible query mode to dynamic query mode, we're leaving transformer behind. You have some options. Planning analytics is dynamic query mode reporting in Cube technology, and that partners really well with Cognos Analytics.
Excellent. And then I think we have one more question. Look, we're pretty good on timing here, guys. And this, I think Tim might have just bounced off, but he's asked, how do you handle multiple developer matters? Example, framework manager in the cloud. William, you have multiple developers, right?
We do. It's between 20 and 50, and I know that's a large range there because there's some people who are provisioned to be developers that don't use it. So most of our developers have again, the communication. They feel comfortable pinging me on Teams like, look, trying to do this, I'm having an issue. Most of that is done at the time it occurs. It's something that if they've run into a problem and we find out that it is tied to the framework manager, that's where your non-prod environment comes in, make the change there, make sure that's going to address your issue, and then migrate it into production. So it can be done. And the more developers you have out in the business as opposed to into a single team, the more that communication becomes required.
Yes. Well, excellent. We are just about to wrap this up. Everyone, thank you for joining us. William, you are amazing. I'm so glad we had this opportunity for you to share your story again. I'm reading the chat and people are like, awesome. Thank you for sharing your upgrade journey. Thanks so much. So people are really appreciative of your efforts here. If you guys have any questions at all, Lodestar Solutions, we're here to help. Motio's here to help. And we're happy to answer any questions. I will be sending out the detailed slide deck that he has that complements his presentation and goes deeper into the weeds on a lot of issues. We'll be sending that out to your email addresses that you registered with, because I know some of you use like Gmail. We saw a couple AOLs. I didn't know that was still around. So guys, do me a favor. We'd like to give you what's your number in the chat right now. What did you think of this presentation? Are you inspired and motivated? 0 to 10, 10 being amazing. Please put that in chat right now. I'm going to give William a big old 10.0. Thank you guys, and go have an amazing day.
Thank you very much. I had a fun
William,
time.
the 10s are coming in. Somebody gave 5 out of 5. They scale a little differently. But yeah, we're seeing lots of 10s. So thank you so much, William. Your story is awesome. And everyone have an extraordinary day. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.